We are rolling on through 2026. I'm already 5 or 6 books into my reading list for the year. But before I get too far, I'd like to go over some of my favorite reads from 2025. So let's break down the top 10 fictional books I read in the year 2025. They weren't published in 2025, but that's the year I read them. And of course, this is subjective. My opinion might be different than yours. In fact, it probably is. Let's get started. Book number 10 is Into the Night by Cornell Woolrich, finished posthumously by Lawrence Block. It's a noir tale of a woman intending to kill herself, deciding against it at the last minute, and in the process of setting down the gun, suffering a negligent discharge which travels through her open window, striking and killing a complete stranger. Our protagonist finds it weighing on her conscience most mightily from this point on, and rather than taking her own life, she decides to spend the rest of hers trying to fulfill her unintended victim's greatest wish, which it turned out to be was hunting down and killing the man who had ruined her own life. It's a twisted tale, and one of the reasons it stuck with me is just how twisted it was. You don't really have happy endings in noir, and while I have had stories that hit me harder and stayed with me longer, like 5 Decembers several years ago, this book just really struck a chord. It's, if you're not familiar with noir, you think it's all Casablanca or Sam Spade parodies. There's a lot of grit involved in the stories, a lot of despair. It came out of the mid-20th century, urban decay, urban decline. Even the Depression era was seeing a lot of it. That's where most of the genre started out. But this one, which I believe was written in the 1960s and finished by Block, as mentioned, after Woolrich's death, was the best noir novel I read this year. Are there others that are better? Yes, just best one of the year. Book number 9 is Monster Hunter Vendetta by Larry Correia, book number 2 in his Monster Hunter International series. If you like horror and you like gunplay, this is a book series you should read. While not as gung-fu as John Wick, and not as horror as the work of H.P. Lovecraft, it's about as close to the mix you're going to get to the two of them. And it has the added bonus of being written by someone who actually knows how weapon systems work, is proficient with firearms, and makes that happen in the stories. So, you won't have someone disengaging the safety on their Glock, or adjusting the shoulder thing that goes up in this novel. That doesn't matter to you? Fine. But if it does, it'll be a plus in your book too. Monster Hunter Vendetta by Larry Correia. Sometimes you read a book where you hate a character right away from their first appearance. That happened when I was reading book 8, Cardboard, a graphic novel by Doug TenNapel. An antagonist shows up just a few pages in, as a widowed father arrives home from work, or rather, searching for a job, with the only thing he could afford for his son's birthday present. A scrap of cardboard. Yeah, cardboard. Well, it turns out there's some magic in the story, because the cardboard comes to life. In whatever shape you make it, becomes real. And that antagonist I mentioned that was so irritating, I cared about him by the end of the story. That takes some doing, especially in a one-shot graphic novel. But TenNapel pulled it off. I really enjoyed it, and I'm not a big graphic novel guy. It's worth looking at. Number 7 is a book that I avoided for a while because it was overhyped. My friend Nathan really enjoyed it, and I kept hearing about it on the Modern Wisdom podcast. Finally, I gave it a try. For those of you that listen to Modern Wisdom, you might know it's Red Rising by Pierce Brown, number 7. I thought it was going to be just another Hunger Games clone, but it wasn't. It was Roman senatorial intrigue in space with the Roman gods, and a Spartacus uprising subplot being actually the main plot. In fact, the whole battle school was just a subplot in the one novel in a giant sprawling franchise. But man, talk about grimdark. Not a genre I've really gotten into before, and maybe there's a lot of grimdark fans who say, this is not real grimdark, what are you talking about, P.D. Fenton? Fair enough. It's my first introduction. I liked it, but I didn't like it at the same time. you may feel like kind of, ugh, what am I reading here? There's no holding back. You know, trigger warnings if you're a trigger warning person. There's a murder. There's sexual assault. This video is never going to be monetized anyways, guys. Don't worry about that. It just made you feel like, oh my goodness, he went there. And in a way, that seems realistic. A lot more so than a lot of the more sanitized dystopian books. Which is funny because they're dystopian. Why are they sanitized? Pierce Brown takes it to the nth degree and makes it seem more real despite being so far-fetched and futuristic. I will say though, after I finished reading each of these, I needed to find something a lot more happy to read. So, I promise this is not a Terry Pratchett channel, but Book 6 is Guards by Terry Pratchett. It is the book I turned to when I was unable to continue on in the Red Rising series. It follows Sam Vimes, commander of the Night Watch of the city of Ankh-Morpork, on the Disc World, a great flat round world on the back of 4 elephants carried through the cosmos on the back of the great turtle Atun. And it's very funny, believe it or not, based on that description. If you like funny stuff, read Terry Pratchett. If you like gritty stuff, read Terry Pratchett. First time I read this, I just liked comedy and I liked fantasy, so it hit my Douglas Adams funny bone. That was like 20 years ago. Now I've read enough noir, as mentioned previously, and seen enough, 1960s, 70s, 80s cops movie to realize, oh, this is Dirty Harry in a fantasy city, but Dirty Harry grows as a character throughout. And there's dragons. And an orangutan who is a librarian. So, it's well worth the read. Even if you've read it before, it's worth a read. Again. Guards, Terry Pratchett, Book 6. Read it! Book number 5 is a space heist thriller and throwback to the golden age of science fiction, titled Theft of Fire by Devin Erickson. A novel that starts with our protagonist, Marcus, finding his spaceship under new command and new ownership, as Miranda has bought the ship out from under him. If he wants it back, and wants to get his name cleared, he will need to follow her in her cockamamie scheme to go to the edge of known space and steal an alien artifact for themselves. And as plans often do, this one, to plan, does not go. In fact, it goes not according to plan. As I've said, classic sci-fi. It's what this feels like, because Erickson is steeped in it. It reads like Heinlein, or Parnell, or Orson Scott Card, a la Ender's Game era. There's supposed to be another book coming out this year, and I believe it's going to be a trilogy in the end. I'm looking forward to reading it, and see where the story goes from here. If you like Tailspin back in the 90s and want to see it play out in space, check out Theft of Fire by Devin Erickson. Book 4, Outlaws of Time, The Legend of Sam Miracle, is both the best young adult or middle grade novel I read this year and the best Western I read in 2025. Considering I got partway through Lonesome Dove before getting distracted, that might have been partially unseated. However, since I did complete it, that title still goes handily to The Outlaws of Time, The Legend of Sam Miracle by N.D. Wilson. Why do I like this book? Because N.D. Wilson writes young adult or middle grade books where the characters feel the real weight of their actions. They feel the danger looming ahead of them. It's like taking the whimsy and magic of the first few books in the Harry Potter series, but having the stakes of the last couple books be hanging over the characters' heads from the very beginning. They may be young, but they are dealing with life and death circumstances. And he also has an approach to time travel in this book, honing in on the concept of the sands of times and taking it to the logical conclusion, with the power of time travel controlled by characters like Father Tiempo in a very interesting way that you have to read to believe. That's why Outlaws of Time, The Legend of Sam Miracle, is on my list. Book number 3 is The Terminalist by Jack Carr. James Reese is a Navy SEAL and a father who has his team and family wiped out in a matter of hours. To make matters worse, he has a brain tumor. His life doesn't have much time left, so he makes a list, a terminal list, you might say. And that's when he goes on what Tarantino would call a roaring rampage of revenge. It's got to be the bloodiest, most tactical rewrite of the Count of Monte Cristo I've ever seen. And you might infer from the fact that there are multiple sequels and a multi-season show on Amazon based on the book that Reese does in fact not die at the end of the book. I won't give anything else away other than to say it's brutal, it's tactical. It reminds me of Tom Clancy's book Without Remorse, crossed with the aforementioned Count of Monte Cristo, and it sparked me on a fiery rampage of my own, reading through every book that Jack Carr has written. More about that later. Number 2 on the list is My Dear Hemlock by Tilly Dillahay, a modern update of Screwtape Letters from a female perspective. Rather than tempting a man in wartime Britain, this time around, the demon and their advisor are dealing with a woman in modern-day America through her ups and downs of domestic life, church life, and all things in between. While that might not sound like a very engaging read for a man, I found myself equal parts affected, impacted, convicted, and edified by this read. There's not a lot of Christian fiction that I would recommend, but this is a book that I feel comfortable recommending to men and women alike. If you're worried that it's not the same thing as Screwtape, don't be. It's not. I'm not saying it's better, because I don't think it is, but it's its own animal, playing in the same sandbox, but doing a different game and heading in a different direction. Still, well done, and recommended to male and female alike. And my number 1 fiction read of 2025 was Savage Son by Jack Carr, the 3rd book in the Terminal List James Reese universe. Carr waded 3 books in to pay homage to his favorite story from childhood, A Most Dangerous Game, a short story about man hunting man, which many of us have enjoyed from high school and beyond. Not only did he explore that story within his own novel, but it was almost trumped by a magnificent second act with a brilliantly plotted and executed ambush that went haywire, pear-shaped, and utterly up in smoke from the moment it was implemented. Why is that a good thing? Because it was the bad guys going up against some rather resourceful folks on a ranch in Montana. And that scene alone, spanning 20 to 30,000 words, was enough to make that book go from good to great, cementing Jack Carr's Savage Son as my 2025 top fiction read of the year. I'm hoping I find more stuff in 2026 that compels, entertains, and stirs the soul. But for now, those are the best books I can recommend. We'll see some more as the year progresses. Thanks for watching.